Hello and welcome to Chapter 4 of Greek for the Rest of Us. Today we'll be going over English nouns. It may seem interesting to spend an early chapter in a book on Greek going over English, but not surprisingly, many of us have forgotten many of the underlying principles about our own language. So it's important that we review English first, and then that gives us a little bit of a framework that we can then use to hang different Greek concepts on as we go. So the first thing we're going to talk about in Chapter 4 is what is a noun. A noun is a word that stands for someone or something, or as you've heard, a noun is a person, place, or thing. Some would add into this that it's also an idea, but really if you think about it, an idea is technically a thing. So person, place, or thing is a good description. And it's important that a noun is a word that stands for something. It is a substantive. There's something or someone, some idea that is substantial behind the word that is a noun. The other thing that we need to talk about is inflection. Inflection is going to become a very important concept as we go further into the study of Greek. And this idea of inflection is that sometimes a form of a word changes when it performs different functions in a sentence or when it changes its meaning. So again, the form changes. Words undergo changes based on what they're doing in the sentence. Now, we don't have an overwhelming amount of words in English that do this, but in Greek, there's an enormous amount of inflection that takes place, and that allows for certain things. It allows for certain things that the author can do, but then that also is things that as we dig into the text and make exegetical observations, we have to be sensitive to the inflection of those words and the abilities that gives the author to express thought in certain ways. So in English, the third person pronoun is one of the most inflected words. We have here our three different cases. That is the subjective case, possessive case, objective case. And then we have the numbers, singular or plural. So if you see also that we have our genders masculine, feminine, and neuter. So if we look at he, for example, the English pronoun, the third person pronoun, first being I or me, second person being you or your, and then third person being he, she, it, they, them, etc. He, if we see he in a sentence, we know that it's masculine, and we know that he is in the subjective case. Now, if we see his, we know that's in the possessive case. So based on what it's doing in the sentence, this he could be referring to the same person. This could both be referring to a person whose name is perhaps Tom. But though the same person, so the same thing, the same person, place, or thing behind the word, it's inflected differently based on what it's doing in the sentence. We also have the same for if there's multiple. So it could be an example here where we have, like say, we have rock. Well, if you have multiple rocks, so a rock fell, but if multiple rocks fell, it wouldn't be it fell, it would be they fell. Now it's perhaps good to highlight here that there is no difference between the masculine, feminine, and neuter form of the subjective plural. Same for the possessive plural. And then same for the objective plural. Which means it's hard to differentiate between the masculine and the feminine they when those are plural forms. The same could be said of it and it for subjective versus objective. It hit it. Again, same form, but performing different functions. So that it looks the same, but it's doing something different. Now, let's just talk briefly about inflection due to function. So in English, we have some inflection or some case inflection that happens. These different functions in English, nouns are referred to as cases. In English, there are three main cases. Those cases are the subjective case, the possessive case, and the objective case. The subjective case is the subject of the sentence. He went to the mall, where he would be the subject of this sentence. So it's in the subjective case. You wouldn't say him went to the mall, nor would you say his went to the mall. So the case matters. And then you could say, in the possessive case, an example would be his ball. And then objective would be, for example, she hit him, where him would be in the objective case, because him is functioning as the direct object. Other than pronouns, most English nouns do not change their form when they perform different functions. In this case, she hit him. Those change forms based on who's doing what. But if you had Sally hit Tom, or Tom hit Sally, those forms are the same. And that's true of, again, most English nouns are going to be that way. The indirect object in English, we don't have a separate case for that. So the indirect object is the same form as the normal objective case. So indirect object, direct object is all going to be in the English objective case. That's going to be a little bit different in Greek. There's actually a different case for direct objects versus indirect objects. Also, it's important to note that word order really matters. English uses the order of words to determine which word is doing the action of the verb, receiving the action, etc. And this is illustrated already above. Sally hit Tom versus Tom hit Sally. It's the order that determines what happens. Who is doing the hitting? Who's doing the hitting in this first case? It's Sally, because Sally happens before the verb in the sentence. But here, it's Tom, because Tom is before the verb. So word order greatly matters in English. All right, so that's a little bit about inflection due to function. Now let's look briefly at inflection due to meaning. Inflection due to meaning. We have a few different categories in English that impact inflection. The first is number, whether there's one of something or multiple. A great example of this would be mouse. There is a meaning difference between one or two of something. If I want 3 scoops of ice cream and you only give me 1 scoop of ice cream, I would very quickly know the difference in meaning between there being one or more than one of something. So one mouse means something different than multiple. And in the case here, this word gets inflected to mean mice, or to say mice. So mouse goes to mice, or rock goes to rocks. And that addition of the plural s is called inflection. So if I wanted to look up rocks in a dictionary or an English lexicon, I would need to look under the lexical form and find rock. The uninflected form is generally the dictionary form. So rock is the uninflected form of rocks. Mouse is the uninflected form of mice. And then we also have words that do this in regards to gender. Meaning changes based on gender. So he, if it's inflected, would for feminine would be she. Or prince, for example, would go to princess. So that's an example of some English inflection due to meaning. And again, we're going to see inflection due to meaning and inflection due to function when we get into talking about Greek nouns. So briefly, let's look at our vocabulary for chapter 4. First we have adelphos, which means brother. Aner, which means male, husband, man. Anthropos, which means man, person, human being, or if it's plural, note the colon here that we're talking about a different, slightly different meaning, that would be in people or mankind. Gune would be woman or wife. Pater would be father. Pneuma would be spirit, capital S, spirit. Wind or breath. Ego would be I. In its inflected plural form, it'd be hemes for we. Su for you. In its inflected plural form, we would say y'all. You would say humes. Again, keep in mind those rough breathing marks. Humes, hemes. And then here we have autos for he, she, or it. And if it's plural, that would be they or them. All right, that concludes chapter 4 of Greek for the rest of us.